You're somewhere between 45 and 58. You woke up tired again this morning. You've been tired for about a decade now in a way that doesn't fully respond to sleep, vacations, supplements, or weekends off. Your aging mother had another doctor's appointment you took her to. Your adult kid moved back in last spring and is still figuring it out. Your career is at the demanding stage where everyone assumes you have it figured out, and nobody in any cultural conversation is talking about what you're carrying. The boomers talk retirement. The millennials talk burnout. You're doing both of their jobs at once, and the world has somehow forgotten there's a generation in the middle. If you're Gen X and you've been quietly exhausted for years in a way that doesn't have a clear name, your psychology is not the problem. The exhaustion is a structural condition with real research underneath it. You're running the most demanding generational position in modern Western life, largely without help, largely without recognition, and largely without the cultural vocabulary to name it. That isn't weakness. That's the actual situation, and it deserves to be looked at honestly. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Every generation has its characteristic stress. Boomers built careers in a different economic landscape, retired with pensions most younger workers can't access, and now face their own aging questions. Millennials carry student debt, housing costs, and a labour market that broke the contract their parents had. Both situations are real and have been written about extensively. Gen X carries something different and largely unwritten. You are the first generation in modern Western life, holding 3 roles simultaneously at peak intensity. You're still caring for your own children, who increasingly stay financially dependent into their late 20s. You're starting to care for your aging parents, who are living longer with more complex medical needs than any generation before. And you're at the most demanding stage of your career, where institutions assume you have the experience to lead, the energy to execute, and the bandwidth to mentor. No generation before you did all 3 at once at this intensity. The cultural conversation hasn't caught up, which is part of why your exhaustion feels invisible. In 2020, journalist Ada Calhoun published a book called Why We Can't Sleep, focused on Gen X midlife exhaustion. Calhoun documented what researchers were already finding. Gen X reported higher rates of midlife burnout, financial stress, and chronic sleep disruption than the cohorts on either side. The most striking finding was about the quality of the exhaustion. It wasn't acute, it was sustained, the kind of low-grade depletion that comes from years of carrying too much without enough recovery time. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild's foundational work on the second shift has been updated to describe the sandwich generation. Pew Research data consistently shows that adults between 45 and 55 are the most likely to be financially supporting an aging parent and an adult child simultaneously. That cluster is overwhelmingly Gen X. The research is clear about what this does to the body and mind over time. Sustained cortisol elevation, disrupted sleep architecture, reduced immune function. A specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't respond to single interventions because the underlying pressure doesn't pause. Picture this. It's Tuesday night. You're 49. You got home at 7:30 from a workday that was somehow both too long and not long enough to finish what you needed to finish. There's a voicemail from your mother's cardiologist about rescheduling. There's an email from your 26-year-old asking about health insurance. There's a load of laundry that's been in the dryer for 2 days. You haven't sat down without your phone in your hand in 3 weeks. You make dinner. You handle the voicemail. You answer the email. You eat standing up because the dishwasher needs unloading before you can sit down. By the time you finally do sit down, it's 9:45. The day is essentially over, and you've done none of the things you wanted to do for yourself. That night, when you lie down, you're not just tired. You're tired in the specific way that comes from running other people's emergencies all day, every day for years, and never quite catching up to the version of yourself you were before any of this started. But here's where it gets interesting. The exhaustion you're carrying is not a character flaw. It's not poor boundary setting. It's not lifestyle failure. It's the predictable physiological outcome of being structurally overloaded for an extended period without a culture that recognizes the overload as real. This isn't happening to you because of something you did. It's happening because of when you were born and what your generation absorbed. But there's more going on than just structural overload. Gen X grew up in a parenting era that emphasized self-reliance to an unusual degree. Latchkey childhood, dual-income parents, less hovering supervision than the cohorts on either side. That childhood produced adults with an unusual capacity to absorb difficulty without complaint. That capacity is now being exploited by the structural overload, where a different generation might have asked for help earlier or set a boundary sooner. You have a culturally embedded reflex to handle it yourself, quietly. And here's the kicker. The exhaustion isn't only physical, there's a specific cognitive load that comes from being the person everyone in the family system depends on for emotional steadiness, logistical coordination, and decision-making. Researchers call it kin-keeping work. It includes remembering everyone's appointments, anticipating everyone's needs, holding the mental map of the entire family system in your head at all times. Kin-keeping is invisible by design. Nobody thanks you for it. And it costs more cognitive bandwidth than any single piece of work you do at your job. The Gen Xer most burned out is often the one whose family and workplace function best, because the burnout is the price of everyone else's smooth operation. The competence that got you here is the same competence now eating you alive. Now let's be honest. Knowing the structural reasons for the exhaustion doesn't actually make it go away. There's no reframe in this video that's going to give you back the sleep you've lost, or redistribute the elder care, or unmake the conditions that put you in this position. The reframe matters because it lets you stop adding self-blame on top of the exhaustion, which is a small but real reduction in the load. It doesn't, by itself, fix the load. If you're carrying too much, you are carrying too much. But for the Gen Xers who have spent the last decade quietly wondering if there's something wrong with them, here's what's actually happening. You're not weak, you're not bad at managing your life, you're not failing at boundaries. You're running a generational position no previous cohort has run at this intensity, and you're running it with the capability your unusual childhood happened to give you. The exhaustion is the cost of that capability being deployed against a structural load nobody is helping you carry. The work isn't to get tougher. The work isn't to manage your time better. The work is to recognize that the load is real, the load is unusual, and the version of you that is exhausted right now is not a broken version of a stronger person. It is the actual person doing the actual work with no cultural script for what that's like. There's something quietly historic about Gen X right now. They are holding two generations on either side of them at the same time at a level of intensity neither boomer nor millennial cohorts ever had to hold. They are doing it largely without praise, largely without help, and largely without anyone naming it as the unprecedented achievement it is. If you've spent any part of the last decade wondering why you can't catch up on rest, why the exhaustion doesn't lift, why the next break never arrives, this might be the moment to consider that what you're doing is genuinely hard, and the hardness isn't a sign of your inadequacy. It's the sign of the conditions you're working inside. You are not the broken version of someone who would have handled this better. You are the person handling this, and the handling is the achievement. You're not weak, you're not bad at life, you're not failing at boundaries, you're running the most demanding generational position in modern Western life, and the exhaustion is the predictable cost of doing that work without infrastructure to redistribute it. If this resonated, please subscribe to Silent Awareness. It helps the channel grow and lets you know when the next deep dive on the quietly different ways your mind works is ready. There's more about you that nobody's named yet. Hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss what comes next.